Welcome to the EXCELcast. I'm Jonathan Kuskiski, Assistant Director of the EXCEL program here at the School of Music, Theater, and Dance at the University of Michigan. And today I'm talking with two special guests, Ashley Bathgate and Karl Larson.
Hi.
Welcome. Great to have you both here.
Thanks for having us.
You're here to do a concert tonight and a Q&A for our students. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk today a little bit about some of those things that we'll talk about at the talk, namely sort of we're calling it New Music in the Jungle. So allusion maybe to another program, but in general, talking about what does it mean to be doing new music today. You're both new music folks. Ashley, you're in Bang & All-Stars and a number of other projects. Karl, you're in Beethoven and also do a number of other projects. So why don't we just jump right in? So for both of you, you're living in New York, right? You're active in these different sort of circles. So what does it mean for you to be a new music musician today?
Well, I think it's an important time for new music. I've been in the 8 years I've been in New York. I've seen a sort of shift in the importance, certainly, of like commissioning, and for myself, it just became a kind of lifeblood and something I was really passionate about. You know, I discovered that being able, in this hub to work with living composers and to play their music and sort of shape how it is written and how it is performed is really fun and exciting. And I think we're also seeing a kind of shift, obviously in the recording industry and things like this, but in the DIY zone. Mm-hmm. So a lot, we're doing away with a lot of the middlemen and women. And you see a lot of artists kind of just creating their own brands, doing their own publicity, fundraising, concertizing, organizing. It's a lot of work, but with technology being what it is, like we can do these things now. And so that's what I've noticed the most, in kind of being in the New York scene and making a life in new music. So I'm having a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I think, I moved to New York a little over 4 years ago after finishing my school and everything. And I went to school in the Midwest, and I was very active in new music then also, but to go to New York where there's such a concentration of so many people doing so many different things all across the arts, all sorts of contemporary art, is happening, and it's just a really exciting environment to be in. So you meet composers and performers, and you collaborate with everybody, and just so many exciting things can happen. You get lots of different pieces, lots of different projects. I mean, this concert is an example of that. It's just one of many different things that we participate in and kind of put together, both because it's it's our career and we're trying to make that happen, and it's a good place to be for that, but also because we just feel very passionately about the art that we make. And it's a great place to be because you can, all over the city. There's always something to go to, always opportunities to play. It's just a great place to be for that.
And it's a friendly environment too. And I think that the key in this niche, this new music genre, is that it's one big experiment. We were talking about this the other night, how it was just that, this music has never been heard, never been played. It doesn't all work, or some of it works, in a big way. And I just think it's the attitude amongst my colleagues and friends and people that you meet. It's like we're all just in this together. It feels very team oriented, and that's a really nice feeling to have. You're all at the same sort of playing field, and this exchange of energy and ideas it's like, and I mean, it's New York, so it's just one big party.
One of the things you're talking about here is interesting because it kind of, so sometimes I think students think about new music as a niche thing. It's a sort of specialized area, if you will. But in the reality, I think about what you're doing is really in the same lineage as Copland, Debussy, Mozart, all these people, right? They were all experimenting. They had circles of people that they collaborated with and were inspired by, both within their art form and outside of that art form. And I'm just curious, obviously this is just your perspective, but I think about these scenes, especially looking at when you read about these different composers' music, when you hear new works, and it seems like there are all these concentric circles, right? That there are groups that are doing their own thing, but there are so many different connections between. Does that feel that way when you're working and going from place to place?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's all these major groups in New York. There's very many of them. Bang on a Can being just one of them, and everybody kind of works together, you know. If you stay at it long enough, you either play with one of those groups or with people from those groups pretty frequently. So there's a big trade of ideas, and yes, like some groups are more leaning towards one aesthetic than another. But I think that everybody has a lot of respect for what each other is doing. And there's so many people there that can just go from one idea to the next and one style of music to the next that it's just a really rich environment to be in. And you're totally right about the kind of melting pot of musicians that we have going on.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to take a little bit of a step back for a moment to think back to the time when you were both sort of transitioning from life where you were, you know, a student, even if you were acting and thinking of yourself as a young professional, but your life was, you know, defined by the experience of being in an academic program, to this new life, right? This new chapter where you are wholly professional and wholly out in the world doing your work. And it'd be interesting to hear some of the key opportunities or things that happened at that point that have set you up for future opportunities and success and where you are today.
Sure. Well, this is an important time, I think, for all of us. And I was doing my grad work at Yale University. And I was on a strict classical diet, you know, of old dead white guys, you know, who are no longer with us. And as much as I love that repertoire, there was something kind of missing. And I wasn't particularly doing a lot of new music at the time, but towards the tail end, started playing a little bit more and working with the composers who were there. And one of the composition faculty, Martin Bresnik, came to me and he said, you show some interesting interpretations of this music, and I think you would be a great fit for this band, Bang on a Can, in New York City. And I was like, Bang on a what? Who are you talking about? But I am going to New York and I need a job, so this would be great. So he wrote me a recommendation letter. And I moved to the city 2 weeks later. You know, I lived in a 5th floor walk-up, in a closet pretty much. And I moved there on a whim. And I had the audition 2 weeks later, right around the corner from my place, actually. And I remember walking in and thinking, okay, well, you know, I'm a cellist and I'm going to sit in front of a panel of judges and they're going to listen to me play. And no, it wasn't like that at all. I walked in, the band was there, like, waiting to play with me, and this sort of excited me. And not only that, but it was music. I never played or heard Steve Reich or Philip Glass or any of these minimalists or post-minimalists, and it felt like being bit, you know, by the bug, and I was all of a sudden feeling this excitement that I hadn't felt before in music making. So I play this audition and it goes well, and I end up sort of trialing and joining this group. Which was really important and kind of introduced me to a whole new world, not only the people and composers, but amplification, you know, of my instrument, and commissioning composers and being on the road and having a touring lifestyle. So this was just like a very magical time, and a time where a lot of people warned me. They said, oh no, don't move to New York, you know, it's really hard, you've got to have a lot of money and you've got to have a job already lined up and a plan and everything's got to be worked out and it's going to be hard for you. And I didn't feel that way at all, actually. I felt like I had a good support system. I had friends and colleagues who were already there, who I'd been to school with and also just known over the years, and they were super supportive of me. And so this whim of moving turned into the best thing that ever happened to me. And I think it's important, like, not to be afraid to take risks in life. And that's one thing I would say to people who are just transitioning, you know, into the next step of your professional life is, don't be afraid. It's all going to work out. You know, you make it happen. You go to a city like this and there's no shortage of ideas or people or platforms, you know, and venues. And now a venue can be anything. It can be the subway. It can be a club. It can be Carnegie Hall. You know, you have all of this at your disposal, and we're all in this boat together. Like I said, being a freelancer especially, I feel like people want to see you succeed, and they want, you know, to share ideas with you. And so that alone is enough to just sort of have no fear of entering that next step of your life.
Wow, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's an amazing thing, because I think a lot of people might assume that being a new musician had been something that could easily have been part of your life the whole from the origins, right?
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to hear about how these pivots can occur in the most surprising ways.
Yeah, the happiest accident ever for me.
So Carl, how about you? You went to school in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in New York?
Well, what happened with me was that, so I went to school in the Midwest. I did my master's and my doctorate at Bowling Green State University, and they have a contemporary music specialized DMA there. So that's what I did. So I was really immersed in new music in a very academic way. And I was introduced to the New York new music culture, and I mean the one that's really happening today with the actual people that are doing it. Everybody thinks about John Cage and Feldman and people like that when you think about New York new music, which is absolutely appropriate. But there's a lot of people like us now, they're doing it. And I learned about all of this, and I was exposed to it when I went to the Bang on a Can Summer Institute at Mass MoCA. And I did that, I think it was maybe my second year of my DMA. And I just made a lot of connections there. And most of the people that go to that festival are either based in New York already, students studying at MSM or NYU or one of these places, or at least on the East Coast. And when you're in an atmosphere like that, it's very natural and important, I think, to start collaborating. And it's such an experience to be with these like-minded people and very excited people. And everybody is into the same kind of thing and has a similar goal. So you start collaborating a lot. So I found myself traveling from Ohio to New York more and more. And, that was an expensive venture, so I kind of had to pick and choose. And by the time I finished my DMA, I thought, man, I should just try this out, So I made this decision to go to New York and keep these contacts and see what I could, foster while I was there. And it was... my experience was a little bit different from Ashley's, where I was there and I kind of planted myself, and I worked some odd jobs for a little while where I started getting things moving, but it kind of snowballed, and I think I'm in the snowball process still. I still get really excited when big gigs happen and stuff like that, and I'm very happy to be doing what I'm doing. And the more that happens to me, the more it becomes solid and concrete, and the more opportunities that are available to me, So that was my experience in moving to New York. I think was the Bang on a Can Festival was a huge thing, and there's many of them like that. Everybody should apply for that festival because it's amazing, and I work there now, and so we spend every summer together and doing this amazing thing for little over 3 weeks in the Berkshires. But there's very many of these things, and if you apply to them and meet people outside of your school, I think is really important, because no matter how amazing the school that you go to is, things become a little bit routine, and it's good to rattle your cage a little bit and experience other things and get out and meet people outside of academia, I think.
Yeah, enriching your experience by enriching your community in different ways, right? And diversifying it in a way.
Yeah, of course. It's these concentric circles you're talking about don't only exist in New York. They exist everywhere, right? I had parts of my circles go back to Bowling Green, and parts of them are in LA, and parts of them are in Chicago, and some of them are in the middle of Iowa. They're all over the place. So that's what those things are all about, I think.
That's great. So, and you're in the midst of a little mini tour here, right? You've been in Ohio, and now you're in Michigan, and then you're going back to Ohio, and then back to New York. And you've got a project you're working on together, right? An album, and some newly commissioned work. That's sort of the centerpiece of that, right?
Yeah.
So can you let's drill down a little bit and talk about this project in some more specifics. So what are the origins of it? I think a lot of times students, they'll see a project, they'll see a group, and they'll say, that's awesome, I want to do that. And I can see how at that point, at the launch concert, how all these pieces came together. But how do I get my order of operations in place? And what things have to be happening simultaneously in order to get there? I know that varies by project. But I think it would be interesting to hear about this project and sort of the story of it and what you've taken away from it.
Well, I think tying it a little bit back to what you were saying about, community and concentric circles, that was how Ken joined the Bang on a Can All-Stars a few years ago. He's been teaching at the Summer Festival. since the beginning, I think.
Yeah,
about.
he's been there for every year.
And so I got to know him and his music, and also Karl from coming to the festival and then working at the festival. So we were making music together. And Ken wrote this piece with us in mind, and he sort of just came and said, hey guys, I wrote this cello and piano piece. And for Karl, he wrote this huge, me versus, or some monster solo piano work. And we premiered it at the Bang in a Can Summer Festival, and then sort of performed it many times after that. So first it was, and the one thing I do want to say is that, the number one thing I feel in my work is that I work with people I like, and who I have fun with and who inspire me. And this is really important to sort of keep in mind as you go along. And so this was a project that it kind of came about, I would say, spontaneously, more than some of the others I've done. And I was really glad for that. This kind of, okay, we're playing music together, and now Karl and I have been playing together for about 3 or 4 years, So we perform this music, and then, of course, the next step is recording, and then you're faced with, oh my gosh, it's going to cost so much money to make an album. Yeah. And so one goes through the process of fundraising, which nowadays, we have these crowdsourcing, campaigns, Kickstarter and Indiegogo and GoFundMe and all of those things, which make it maybe easier, because to this particular campaign, a lot of our friends gave, like something like $25 or $50. Yeah. And we reached our goal rather quickly. We had a couple fundraising concerts that we did. We approached some individuals. It's always a mixed bag with how you fund it, but I think again, community is very important in this way. We support each other in our projects and making them happen in a climate where it's not so easy anymore. Record labels aren't offering incentives or money to do these projects. So that was kind of the initial. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, how much did you raise through your Kickstarter for the album?
I think it was somewhere around 6,000.
Yeah, and then we raised
the majority of
another 6 just about for through individuals and through the concerts that we did. So yeah, it's expensive to make a record, and that's usually the hardest part is sort of getting. And sometimes I've done projects where you're just like, oh, we're gonna worry about the money later. We just got to do this. In this case, I thought actually the 3 of us were really on top of it and planned it well and kind of made sure we had what we needed in place first to just track it. We tracked it in Fredonia, SUNY Fredonia, right? Yeah, beautiful hall. And we were really happy to have made that record. And from there we again entered the next stage of kind of putting it together. And then Karl organized this amazing tour for us, to have these concerts, and we're doing a release show in New York. So I think it took shape over the course of 3 or 4 years, actually, if you go back to the moment where we were all right, let's learn this piece together.
Yeah. And so, the project, like we said, it's entirely Ken Thomson's music. So for people who don't know Ken is the clarinetist and saxophonist in the Bang on a Can All-Stars. So we spent a lot of time together. Yeah. And he's, a close friend of both of ours. And that just goes back to the whole community thing. Most people that write me pieces are good friends, and we're all in this together, and that's sort of part of it. So, right, so the album is called Restless, and it's about to come out on the 26th, so we're really kind of pedaling it around and doing our thing, but it does feel like such a culmination, because it's these two, number one is these two substantial works.
Yeah.
They're big pieces, and I think that they're fantastic, really, really fantastic music. So they're a pleasure to learn. They're a big challenge. So it feels like a culmination because of that. But there's also the satisfaction of going through all the steps of making the record happen. And Ashley's absolutely right. Every single project, every single commission, record, anything like that is going to be a little bit different. But there's all these different avenues that you can take. There's grants, there's the fundraising, both with independent donors, maybe people that that you approach to help fund a specific thing for the record. You know, say, oh, we need to master this record. Will you help us master this record? Or there's also, you know, we did Kickstarter, but like, you know, there's all those different platforms, and you approach people and you decide what your rewards are going to be and things like that. So for us, it was a lot of people essentially said, oh my gosh, this is going to be a great record. I'm going to essentially buy it right now. So they bought it and trusted that we were going to, you know, do due diligence and make a good recording. And it was just a lot of friends, you know, a lot of friends, a lot of people interested in Ken's music and our playing and things like that.
So the thing is, for I think about if I was a student, sort of on the cusp of leaving, you know, my schooling into full professional life, I would say that would be pretty awesome to raise $6,000, you know, for an album. But you know, again, it's not something that it's very clear from your story that you just do overnight, right? In other words, this goes to sort of a tenet of fundraising that quite often, even in the arts, the people that want to support the arts, what they're really giving is they're investing in people. They're investing in people that they believe in. So the performers, the composers, the creators. And because ultimately they don't really have a say over what the piece of art is, you know? So they have to believe in the people that are creating it and performing it. And so if you aren't cultivating this kind of rich network, not because you want to one day raise $6,000, but because you want to build these rich relationships, as you mentioned, people that inspire you and make your life richer, you know, it's very hard to pull off a successful fundraising campaign through any means, but, you know, particularly even with Kickstarter campaign, right, without that kind of support group. And I think that's true even if you want to raise $500 or $600 or $1,000, that it's going to be more successful because it's not just about raising the money for you, right? It's obviously you're building a deeper connection with these people because they're going to get this music. They've already signed up to get it. So, you know, when the album comes out, people are going to listen to this album. They're going to share it. It's not just going to sit somewhere, right? So in a way, building this community is paying forward not just for your own potential professional growth one day, but you're paying forward for the art that you're making.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
which is really important, I think.
And it goes both ways because this time we were the people with the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
There's always something. So I'm you know, we give it back. It's just a big community of people, you know.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right that building that community is so important for all of these different reasons. So everywhere you go, every festival you do, every class you take, you know, everyone you collaborate with in school is eventually going to be out of school, is eventually going to be out of those situations where you first met them and is going to be a professional person. And the more that you grow, the more that the people around you grow, and everybody kind of is raised up in this kind of way.
Like even coming, I mean, I'm hardly ever in the Midwest, and even coming here, we had so many people, Bang on a Can Festival alumni, who are like posting on Facebook and like come to this show,
great.
and my heart is warmed by this. Like it's really like nice to see and feels good. So I think it's really great. The one thing I wanted to say too is that, you know, these projects, you're fostering, yes, a community and relationships, and there's patience that has to happen also over time. You know, this is again like not only projects that sometimes take years to come to fruition, but just being in a community for a long time. Like I'm 8 years in, and I'm only in the past couple years like starting to feel a foothold and a kind of stability there in life and in music. And I think it's important to have patience and also to not spread yourself too thin and to be invested in projects that interest you and that you are really passionate about, you know, because they take time and it is difficult, you know, like to sort of see them through and to every detail, you know, having the attention there. So it's kind of, it's good to think big and to think in the long term, you know, with these things.
That's great. Well, I love how you've also talked about just even this experience of this tour, illustrating how you can build a community that becomes a global community for you, right? And this is one of the advantages, right, of living in our time, being a musician, is that because of technology, but also just because of the excitement and energy around new music all over the place, not just in New York, that you have these communities of people that are interested in the same things now and connected to you pretty much wherever you go. And that's a great lesson. It's so wonderful to have you on campus, to have you here as part of this tour and this project. Thank you for sharing some time with us today to talk about this. And we'll look forward, this hopefully will be aired by the time your album's out and available, to hear it and to see what you're doing next.
Great.
Thank you so
for
much.
coming in.
Yeah.